Welcome to Cashflow Mastery. My name is Jason Hamilton, and I'm the founder of Keep It Simple Financial Planning, Keep It Simple Wealth Academy, and the creator of the Wealthy Gentleman course. I'm also a certified financial planner, and I've been coaching people on their finances for over 15 years at this point. And what I found is the number one foundation on whether people are successful or not long-term with their finances is mastering your cash flow. So I decided to put this course together to help you get started on your journey to building wealth. More than likely, if you found this course, you found it because you didn't sign up for our full program called the Wealthy Gentleman and you decided to take the freebie. If that's the case, that's great. I'm happy you're here. But I also want you to have your first lesson in becoming a wealthy person. Wealthy people are committed people. They make quick decisions, and when they see something they think is of value, they go all in on it. So either I didn't show you the value yet, or you're just not somebody who's ready to commit. That's okay. I'm gonna do my part here and show you some value, give you hopefully a great experience here, and really help you get started on your wealth building journey. And if you're somebody who has trouble committing, then I really want you to think about who you are, if you're really committed and you're really somebody who wants to build wealth long term, or if you're somebody who's gonna be sitting in analysis paralysis, because that is not the type of person that builds a lot of wealth over time. So the first thing I wanna let you know is I did not come from a background with wealthy parents. I grew up possibly like you did. Single parent, I'm a first generation wealth builder. My parents had a business and they did buy a house at some point, but we knew nothing about investing in the stock markets. We knew nothing about owning rental real estate or investment real estate. We knew nothing about taking our current business and expanding that to becoming a bigger business, which then can create wealth without us having to be there. So these are all concepts that may be new to you or they may not be, but they are concepts that if you want to become somebody who becomes a very wealthy person over time, you must master. But the foundation is, with anything with building wealth, is mastering your cash flow. Because if you cannot master your cash flow, it's going to be very difficult to do anything else that's going to help you build a large amount of wealth long term. Generally, you're going to end up failing. The number one reason for business failure is improperly managed cash flow. It's as simple as that. The number one reason people don't build wealth as individuals over time is because they do things like get into debt, they don't manage their money right, and they don't put enough money into investments over time to build something substantial for themselves. So that's why I decided to put together this course called Cashflow Mastery to help you get started and help you build the foundations of what you need to become a very successful person long term. So without further ado, let's jump in and start learning a little bit about the background about how to manage your cash flow in the right way, how we think about it, and then through the next series of courses, we're going to give you access to one of our systems for free so you can build your first cash flow plan. We call that a cash flow map, and you'll see why in just a few moments. So without further ado, let's dive in. First, where we're going to start is we're going to talk about what is personal finance, because a lot of people think they understand what personal finance is, but in reality, they don't. So let's just start with the basics of that. And this is designed, let me remind you, this is designed for somebody who is a first generation wealth builder. So for those of you that may be more advanced, that's okay. We're gonna start with some of the basics here and we're gonna catch you all up to speed and get us all on the same page. So personal finance as a term covers the concepts of managing your money, saving, and investing. It's really those three things. But it can also include things like banking, budgeting, mortgages, investments, insurance, retirement planning, and tax planning. These are all things that you may not be aware of that you need to have all in the proper places as you are becoming a wealthy person. If you're somebody that is just getting started, especially if you're somebody who's done a good job of earning a good income, generally most people are finding us are earning at least $100,000 a year. And if you're earning $100,000 a year and you're not investing your money, time is of the essence, because every year you wait is 1 year taken away from your compounding of your wealth. So again, I'm glad you're here, but we're going to talk about some things here to get you started. All right, so we talked a little bit about personal finance as a whole, but what is financial planning? Financial planning is a little bit different than simply personal finance, and there's a lot of depth to it. And like I mentioned, I'm a certified financial planner. So there's a lot to this subject. I can go on for hours and hours and hours, but we are just going to start with some of the basics today. Okay, so financial planning is a comprehensive process of setting, planning, and managing your financial goals, right? Because we don't usually just have one financial goal, we usually have multiple financial goals. So there's things that we need to be accomplishing in the short, medium, and long term. So this encompasses various aspects, like budgeting is the term you might have heard before. I don't necessarily like the idea of budgeting. I like what we call cash flow planning, and we'll talk about that more in just a few moments here. But retirement planning, that's also known as financial independence planning, planning for financial freedom, planning for a day when your savings and investments can provide an income for you so that you no longer have to show up and do a job anymore, okay? Tax planning. If you're somebody who wants to build wealth, then what you're gonna find out is your number one enemy is gonna be taxes, okay? I understand. We do need some sort of taxes to keep the world running. We are in the United States. We have a lot of services that are available to us that our taxes pay for. But I also believe the government overtaxes us by far, and we send a lot of money to other places like other countries that in reality we should be keeping more for ourselves or lowering the taxes of hardworking Americans. But that's my personal philosophy. But what we can do for you is help you plan so that you can keep your taxes low or put your money in the right places today so you can defer taxes and then pay taxes later when your tax rate is going to be a lot lower. This is what's called tax planning. So tax planning, once you start earning a reasonable income, is going to be the primary focus that you're going to have to do on a year-to-year basis. Other things you're going to think about when it comes to your financial planning is things like risk management. What does that mean? Well, one example would be purchasing life insurance, for example. So if you have a spouse or a family and you no longer earn an income, you'd want to make sure you have enough life insurance to cover your family so they would be okay. That's one example. The next thing here is investing. You will never become wealthy by simply saving. Let me repeat that again. You will never become wealthy by simply saving. You must become an investor. The problem is, for most first-generation investors, they're very nervous about investing. They don't know what to do, and they get their mind set on getting rich quickly, okay? That is the number one thing that can destroy your wealth. If you can get rich quickly, you can lose it quickly. We believe that you should have systematic investments that are going into long-term investment vehicles that are going to generate a very consistent return over time. It does not mean you're not going to take any risk, but you're going to want to take calculated risk, okay? But again, our conversation today is around cash flow planning, because if you don't have any money to invest, well, then you're not going to get anywhere. The next thing here is estate planning. Estate planning is what you want to have happen to your wealth after you pass away, right? So that could be like getting a will, a trust, medical directives, those type of things. So when it comes to financial planning, this is where we're going to be integrating all the different aspects of your goal setting, your planning, and managing your overall financial situation. So this process is crucial to meet your financial objectives and secure your financial future. I believe everybody needs a financial planner, and ideally a certified financial planner. But that's some of the basics of financial planning. All right, it all begins with cash flow. Get this right and watch the flows grow. You need to have cash flow. You need to have money that you are putting away after your expenses. And I should say prior to your expenses, by the way, because we believe that you should invest and save first, then spend your money, right? This is a difference between what wealthy people do and what the middle and lower classes do. The middle and lower classes spend their money first and hope something's left over. The wealthy assign their income to their investments first and then live off whatever's left over. You may think it's the same thing, but it's actually not. And it's quite a big difference when it comes to your mental shift that happens over time when you're always investing consistently out of everything that you make, versus hoping something's left over and then realizing usually it's not going to be, because there's an energy around money that if you don't plan it and you don't assign it, somehow it just disappears. And if you can relate to that, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you that are good savers, again, you may have some good habits in place, but the majority of people in our country do not. So that's who I'm talking to today. All right, so what is cash flow planning? Cash flow planning is a process of directing your income streams towards predefined spending, savings, and investment goals. Simply put, it's where you direct every single dollar that's coming in to you from your income, okay? You may be a business owner, you may have a job. Either way, ideally you're making some sort of income. So cash flow planning is what you do with that income after you bring it home and you direct it towards each of these separate three categories here. So what are the components of cash flow planning? Income, expenses, and savings. Simple, right? So my whole goal here for you is to keep things as simple as possible. Doesn't mean these things can't get complicated, but in reality, it's really this simple. When you have the components of cash flow planning, you're looking at your income, minus your expenses, minus your savings, and then all the money should be allocated for after those three things are done properly. So we recommend what's called a windshield philosophy. That means a forward-looking cash flow planning process versus a rear-view mirror philosophy. And that would be known as your familiar term called budgeting, right? So budgeting, normally what people do is they look at what they spent and then they try to create some sort of spreadsheet, and then they just go ahead and spend again, and then they go back and review their spreadsheet. That's not what we recommend. We recommend what we call the windshield philosophy, where you go in at the end of the month, prior to the month beginning, you review what you're going to be making for that month going forward, and then you assign everything ahead of time, and you automate your savings and investments, and then the rest of the money that you need to be spending, ideally you can set up on automated payments so that you don't have to manage as much of that as possible. But for sure, you want to be looking forward versus looking backward when it comes to how you're allocating your cash flow. And when you look at most budgeting tools, all they really are is expense tracking tools. They kind of tell you what has happened in the past, and they can be useful. But if you're only focusing on the past, then you're kind of living in this cycle where if you're really trying to shift your life and move forward to becoming a wealthy person, you cannot be doing and thinking like what you were doing previously, right? You need to step into a new identity. And by looking forward, then you're always going to be focusing on moving into that new perspective of you as a wealthy person versus the person you're at today, which if you're here and you found this, more than likely you're not living up to what you have for your current aspirations. The other thing is, if you understand how the brain works, okay? So this is getting into a little bit of neuroscience. When you live in the past, you activate old programming, okay? So I want to talk about this for a second. As humans, all we really are is fancy biocomputers, right? We're just computers. We operate on software programs just like a computer does in general. You may not believe that, but from birth, you were assigned to have different programs running for you. If you were born in America, you were assigned as an American, right? If you were born into some sort of religion, whether it's a Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, you were assigned with a set of certain programs and beliefs growing up that you believe to be true, right? And someone of a different religion might not believe those same things to be true. So we have to understand that we are actually very simple, even though we are complex. And so if you know how to switch the programs on your brain and run new software and reprogram yourself, you can go from being a lower middle class person to becoming a very wealthy person. And it all starts with the programs and the beliefs that you have and how you operate and how you're interacting with your finances on a day-to-day basis. So if you start today and you're very intentional with how you're assigning your cash flow going forward, you will be telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And that's a very powerful concept because now you're being proactive versus reactive. Being proactive with your finances is the key to building wealth over time. All right, so what's step one? Where do we get started here? Very simply. Step one is converting all your income and expenses into a monthly number. Okay? So you may have expenses that come up once a quarter, every 6 months, even once a year. You may have expenses that you pay twice a month, for example. But the foundation of what we're going to teach you here goes back to you creating a cash flow plan and converting everything into a monthly number. Okay? All income and expenses into a monthly number. That's number one. Okay, and to do this, you may need to do a couple exercises first, and we'll talk about that, but we're going to start here with this high-level overview. So you may ask, why a monthly number? The reason is clarity, right? Because if you have different expenses going on at different times, which I know you do, but if you're trying to operate on a bi-weekly budget, a monthly budget, a quarterly budget, semi-annual budget, it's just not going to work. We need to manage everything with a monthly number so you can get very clear on exactly what you have coming in, exactly what's going out, and exactly where every dollar is going to be. And so you may need to split up some things or plan ahead on some things so that you can do this, and that's okay. We're going to teach you a little bit about that. But this is the foundation. Everything needs to be brought into a monthly number. All right, so here's our keep it simple methodology, okay? Where it's gonna start is you're gonna take your net income, which is your after-tax income, because at the end of the day, you have to pay your taxes, okay? Then you're gonna break this up into 3 categories here. Your long-term savings, and this savings can be pre-tax, by the way, and that's okay. So if you're putting money into a 401k or a traditional IRA, that would be pre-tax. But either way, you're going to put your first amount of money into your long-term savings. So whether that's going to be for a goal you're saving into a retirement account like a Roth IRA, 401k type of account, or it could be a longer-term savings goal like purchasing a house, for example, your down payment. Your net income, you're first going to start by putting away money into your long-term savings. Okay? Then from there, you're going to allocate money towards your fixed expenses. So your fixed expenses are going to be generally things that don't change that much. Your rent or mortgage, your insurance payments, your subscriptions, things like that are very consistent. And then number 3 is your variable expenses. Your variable expenses are going to change a little bit on a monthly basis, and that's okay. That's never going to be to the penny. But what we want to do is plan ahead so that we're not overspending on these variable expenses. For example, generally groceries, something like that is going to be variable. Gas sometimes is going to be variable expense. Clothing is going to be variable expense. You're not going to spend the exact same amount of money every single month. Vacations, those things can be variable expenses because those differ in price. But if you set a target ahead of time and then you set aside the money in a specific account for that, then the money's always going to be there versus you scrambling to make these payments when these things come up. But that's okay. We're going to label those under variable and we're going to do our best to get as accurate as possible when we do that. All right, so long-term savings. So the goal of our long-term savings is to replace your income. This is your financial freedom money. We don't want to just save to save, okay? There's no point to save to save. We want to be saving to invest. We always want to be thinking about investing. Where can we invest? Where can we put money to our savings to grow it so that over time it makes money for us while we're not there, okay? So you will need to set aside money for emergencies. And we generally recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses. So once you get your first cash flow map done and you understand what your monthly income number is, you're going to save 3 to 6 times that as your original savings, okay, as your emergency fund. And then once you establish your emergency fund, then all the money above that towards your long-term savings needs to be invested. And we want that money to be invested on an automated basis, okay? Because if you automate it, there's been research that's been done that shows that if you automate your savings goals, you are 19 times more likely to hit that goal than if you have to go in every single time you get paid and then allocate that money, right? So we're going to leverage your psychology as a human. We're going to run the program in the way to set you up for success. And so that's why we say your long-term saving goals should be automated, right? Then we're going to get to your fixed expenses. So like I said, fixed expenses are generally bills that don't change much over time. Rent, utilities, cell phone plans, insurance payments, subscriptions, and debts owed. These are predictable payments, right? So this is very easy. So once you get this established, you're going to create your cash flow map, and those are going to be in there. And then our system that we're going to give you access to makes it very easy to duplicate your cash flow map each month. And so once you get these established, all you're gonna have to do is update any variable expenses, any new expenses that are coming in, and it becomes a very efficient process at that point. Next here we have your variable expenses, and these are much more difficult to predict, but once you get a flow down and once you go through some of the exercises we're gonna have you go through, you're gonna have a general idea what you're currently spending. And then once you understand what you're currently spending, then we could take a look and see, hey, do we need to make any adjustments here, or are we doing okay there? So here's some examples: groceries, gas, dining out, entertainment, clothing, right? The goal here, ultimate goal, is to set your spending targets in advance, because these expenses can very easily get away from us. When I'm working with clients that are newer to cash flow, they generally are overspending in one of 3 areas: entertainment, dining out, or car payments, right? So car payments are something that go into the fixed expenses, but usually they buy too much car because they don't really pay attention to how much they should be spending. They just spend on the car that they want. But your dining out, that would be things like even going out and having drinks, going on dates, those type of things. That can get out of hand very quickly. If you haven't noticed, inflation has been quite bad these last few years, and the cost of going out has gone up astronomically. It's pretty crazy just to go to a basic restaurant what it costs to go out now. And so those type of things, and groceries as well, have gone up. And so depending how you eat, both of those 2 categories can be controlled. They can also get out of control very easily. So that's why I want you to set your targets in advance after you do your cash flow plan, and then you have to stick to that. Okay, so we'll talk about some strategy for sticking to that, but that's the next big hurdle is, okay, yes, it's easy to write it down and say what you're gonna spend, but if you don't stick to it long term, then your cash flow plan is not gonna work out, and then things are gonna be a mess, right? So that's why we need to set these in advance and have a strategy to stick to them. All right, you may be somebody that's dealing with debt right now. Okay. And if you're sitting in credit card debts, if you have high interest debt of any sort, then you need to get on a debt payoff plan. Okay. This is very important. So your cash flow plan is going to be solely focused on paying off debt until you're out of high interest debt. And what do I mean by high interest debt? Any debt that is above 5%. Okay. If you have debts above 5%, I don't care if it's student loans, cars, credit cards, that all needs to be paid off before you start investing. The one exception is mortgages. If you have a home that's higher than that, that's okay. It is what it is. As I'm recording this, mortgages are just crossed over 8% in 2023. They were 3% 3 years ago. Luckily, we bought a house during that time, and it's a huge difference. It's about a $2,500 per month difference if we'd have bought the same house today versus 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, I should say. But it is what it is, right? So we just have to be in the right place at the right time. But at the end of the day, I planned and saved for 7 years, so I was ready to buy my home. So was I lucky? I don't know. All I can say is I planned ahead of time, and I was in the right place at the right time. So for you, if you're somebody who's in debt, this is a strategy we recommend because it has the most behavioral reward, okay? And you as a human, I'm playing to the human here. We're not playing to the math person. If you're a math person, we'll go through that process in a second. But more than likely, I'm going to recommend 90+% of people follow this plan because it's going to be the best plan. And this is called the debt snowball. So with the debt snowball, what we're going to do here is list all your debts from smallest to largest, and you're going to ignore interest rates, okay? Doesn't matter if you have higher or low interest rates, you're going to go smallest to largest debts, okay? Then what you're going to do there is you're going to list all your debts and all your payments out. Then you're going to make minimum payments on all of your debts except for the smallest one, okay? And then once you have that smallest one, after you do your cash flow map and you see what you should have left over every single month to apply towards your savings or whatever goal you're focusing on, you're going to pay as much as possible on that smallest debt until it's completely paid off, right? And then once that smallest debt's paid off, you're going to take the minimum payment from the smallest debt plus everything in your cash flow map, and you're going to apply that to the next debt, and so forth and so forth. So if you remember the old cartoons where they would start with like a small pebble at the top of a hill, and it might be a snowy day outside, and that pebble would start rolling down the hill and then start picking up snow. And as it went down the hill, it would get more and more snow, and eventually as you get towards the bottom of the hill, it would turn into this big, huge, monstrous snowball, crushing everything in its way. That's how it's going to work as you work your way up this debt snowball plan, okay? And again, if you were to join our program, we have systems and tools for this, but this is something that's pretty simple to put down on the spreadsheet for you, and you can do this yourself. So step 4 is, once the smallest debt is paid, you're going to roll what you're paying on the smallest debt to the next smallest debt, and so forth. Step 5 is repeat that process until all debts are paid off. So you should not be saving anything over 1 month of expenses until your debt is paid off. Anything over 1 month of expenses needs to go to your debt payoff until that's done. Then you can go to your 3 months of expenses, and then you can start investing if you're ready at that point. But until your debt's paid off, that's not something we're going to recommend. All right, this is for the math nerds that think you know better than me. Okay, this is for that 10% that thinks they want to outsmart themselves. What I can tell you is, if you are in debt, there's probably a good chance that you're not the best, not as good at math as you think you are. But that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do this anyways. All right, so in this case, we're going to follow a different path called a debt avalanche. In this case, step 1 is going to be listing all your debts from highest interest rate to lowest, okay? So mathematically, this is the best thing you can do. And this technically will pay off your debts the fastest, but sometimes it can take a lot of stamina that very few people have. So I like the debt snowball method. But anyways, step 2 is you're going to make minimum payments on all your debts except the one with the highest interest rate. Step 3, you're going to pay as much as possible on your highest interest rate debt until it's completely paid off. Step 4 is once the first debt is paid, you're going to roll what you're paying on that debt to the next highest interest rate debt. And then step 5 is going to repeat that process until all debts are paid off. So it's the same philosophy, but instead of going smallest debt to largest debt, you're going highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. So again, do what you want to do. I recommend the debt snowball for most people. If you have 2 debts that are very close and one's a higher interest rate, you can pay the high interest rate one first. But in general, I'm going to recommend that smallest debt to highest debt because personally, this worked for me, right? When I was 29 years old, I had student loans, I had credit cards, I had car payments, and I was renting. I don't know anything about personal finances. This was back in 2008, 2009 when the whole economy collapsed. My parents lost their restaurant, I lost my job, and I found out why financial planning is so important. I found out why emergency savings is so important, but I didn't have it at that time. I almost got kicked out of my apartment at that point and lost my car, but I survived, and I'm still here today to live about it. But what I learned was by following this process of doing the debt snowball, it felt so good to pay things off that even though it took me about a month or 2 longer than it would have if I went highest interest rate first, those wins you get early are very motivating. And my highest interest rate debt was a lot larger than my smallest debt. So again, you do what works for you, but I recommend following one of these 2 plans so you have a systematic process to pay off your debt, and whatever works for you, that's fine. All right, so now we're going to talk about long-term savings versus short-term savings. So when you are thinking long-term, you can take more risk with your money, okay? When you're taking short-term, you have to take less risk with your money, right? So any money that you need in anywhere less than 5 years, maybe 3 years or less, okay? But a minimum of 3 years or to 5 years, anything less than that, you should not be investing that money. That's gonna be money for things like vacations, home repairs, gifts. That's short-term savings. That money should be in a high-yield savings account or CDs. Simple. Don't mess around with that money. Keep that in a savings account and look for high-yield savings accounts. Currently, high-yield savings accounts are paying 4.75 to 5.5%. It's a great rate. Just a couple years ago, they're paying nothing. So that's not bad. Long-term savings, that's going to be like your retirement investment. So that'll be stocks, bonds, ETFs, crypto if you're into that, real estate. That should be money that you're investing for a minimum of 5 years, ideally 10 years or more. Okay, so when we talk about long-term savings versus short-term savings, that's what I'm talking about here. All right, going back to our Keep It Simple methodology, we're gonna have these 3 steps here. Like I said, you're gonna get your net income after taxes, and then the first chunk of money you're gonna put is into your long-term savings. So ideally, I want you to put a minimum of 10%, but ideally 20 or 30% if you can towards that. Then you're gonna pay your fixed and variable expenses. Then we're gonna take our variable expenses and we're gonna break that down into 3 more categories, okay? Save to spend, allocated spending, and unallocated income. Okay, this unallocated income is the money that you're going to discover. I can 100% guarantee it. When you do your first cash flow map, you're gonna say, hey, here's what I'm taking home. Here's what my expenses are after I did my monthly spending number, and here's how much I should have left over. And I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to have that much money go into your savings every single month. Maybe you will, but 99.9% of the times people find free money. But we call this unallocated income. Okay, so that's the terminology we're going to use. Part of becoming a wealthy person is learning a new language, right? So we're going to learn the same language here. We're going to be talking about unallocated income because that's the money we're going to now use to put towards our longer term goals. By the time we have a good cash flow map laid out, proper fully filled cash flow map is that your unallocated income equals zero or as close to zero as we can because we want everything allocated. Everything should be allocated to your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, or your long-term savings. All money needs to go to one of those three categories. And if you have unallocated cash flow, it's just kind of sitting around in your checking account. We call that dead money, and that's essentially like a leaky bucket, right? So that's money that is not going towards compound interest. It's not going towards building your wealth. It's just sitting there slowly dying. And then what normally happens is money in your checking account that you don't have an allocation for just somehow disappears. It ends up on, things you just spend, generally going to the store, alcohol, going out, whatever it may be, because you think you have extra money. So you need to allocate every single dollar. Okay, we want no leaky buckets. By allocating every dollar of your income, then you will focus your greatest wealth building tool like a laser. You'll hit your goals faster, you'll reduce lost purchasing power, and you're gonna start growing your wealth exponentially. But you gotta understand, if you're somebody who's new to investing, right? I've been doing this for a while now. But it's amazing that when you start getting your money in investments like real estate, stock markets, and the money starts growing for you without you having to be there, it's amazing what happens, but over a long period of time. And this is what the wealthy people do. I've served hundreds of millionaires at this point. Less out of my 300 plus millionaires that I've served doing financial planning over time, less than 5 of them inherited a huge chunk of money. Almost all of them doing exactly what I showed you. They got very good at their cash flow, then they allocated their money towards real estate, their business, or long-term investments in the stock market. That's simple. That's most 90+% of them did. And once you're able to execute this consistently, you will achieve what we call cash flow mastery. And it really is like a place of Zen. Once you understand and you really allocate your cash flow, everything's going for you in the right places, you have all your systems set up, everything's automated, and you can focus solely on growing your greatest wealth building tool, which is your income. It is a place of peace, it is a place of calm, and it feels really, really good to have all this done right versus what I can guess you're probably feeling like now, which is living in chaos because you don't know where to put your money, how to invest it, what place do you put it first, second, and third. And I know what that feels like, okay? And that's why we created this program for you. But the first thing you need to do is get a good understanding of your cash flow. We call that cash flow mastery, right? So that's what we're doing here with you. So the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna create your cash flow map. It's gonna look similar to this, and it's gonna follow exactly what I laid out for you in this format. You're gonna receive a visual report that looks just like this, and also a detailed ledger of all your income, savings, debts, and expenses, and also your what you should have for your unallocated income that you can apply to your first goal, whatever that may be, whether it's paying off debt or saving for your long-term investment. So the next step you're gonna take here is you're going to go to our website here. It's keepitsimple.cashflowmapping.com/register, okay? And you're gonna go there and you're gonna create an account. So you're gonna start there with building your cash flow map, and in the next series of videos, we're gonna show you how to do that step by step. But go ahead and go there now, create your account, and then let's go through the next videos to show you how to create your initial cash flow map, right? If you need any help along the way, feel free to reach out and just reply to any email that we sent you, or go to support@keepitsimplefinancial.com, and we'll see what we can do to help you out there, okay? That's it for this video. See you on the next one.